Today on Notsam Wrestling, The Rock is singing, Cody is crying, Sami Zayn is causing backlash, Jimmy and Jey is official, AEW is full of star power, and Shayna Baszler is fighting at Bloodsport. This is Notsam Wrestling. What a week it has been. It has been absolutely packed as we head closer and closer and closer to the granddaddy of them all, Wrestlemania. Don't forget, if you're going to be in Philadelphia, to get your tickets to the live Notsam Wrestling podcast. Tickets are moving along quite nicely at the Helium Comedy Club in Philadelphia. Be there or be square. It's always a good time when we do a live Notsam Wrestling podcast. Also want to thank everybody that took some time out this week to watch the Busted Open versus Notsam show that Dave LaGreca and I did, kind of having a civilized, cultured debate, an elevated conversation, the likes of which you rarely see in this genre of professional wrestling, discussing, really, what made more sense, Cody Rhodes winning or Roman Reigns winning. So some of that you can see on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel. You can see even more on the Busted Open YouTube channel and on the SiriusXM app and all that, but the reason that we can do shows like that is because every week interest is becoming elevated and elevated and elevated. I feel like more and more now I'm hearing from people that are becoming aware of what specifically is going on in wrestling, and it's people that generally wouldn't. I was at my daughter's book fair over the week. It was on the weekend. It was on Saturday. Because some parents of her friend were like, yeah, we were at some sports bar on Friday night and Smackdown came on, which, by the way, just the fact that Smackdown's on at sports bars is a big enough deal. But they're like, yeah, and then The Rock comes out and he's wearing this Versace vest. I mean, what's the deal? Boom. Gotcha locked in as we head towards WrestleMania. That's the conversation that The Rock in this entire story is bringing, because what did they say? The Rock was there, but he's wearing this Versace vest. It's not just that The Rock's back. It's the story that's being told around The Rock being back. But what a promo this guy cuts. What a promo this Rocky Maivia cuts to start SmackDown. I always love when The Rock promo begins either at the top of the show or at the top of the second hour. I don't like a Rock promo that closes the show. Because The Rock likes to get out there, man. You could tell. The Rock likes to get out there. He likes to feel the crowd. He likes to figure out. He doesn't ever overstay his welcome. But he also wants to make sure that they get their fill of The Rock. And if he's feeling going in a certain direction, he goes there. And I would say 9.9 times out of 10, he's been proven to be correct. I mean, there's all those stories from back in the day of This Is Your Life Rock, the segment between Mankind and the Rock, that was the top of the second hour on that episode of Raw, I think. But it ends up going over 30 minutes. It was slotted to go 12. So they're canceling stuff on the fly. Of course, they're getting screamed at when they get back. What are you guys doing? We're trying to do a TV show. We're trying to run on schedule. But guess what? The segment was great. And when the ratings came back, it was one of the highest rated segments in the history of the show. So it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. And coming off of SmackDown, there was a lot to talk about, but that's the thing that has stuck with me. That's the video that I'm watching back on the WWE's YouTube channel, and that's the video that people that I know that might not watch week in and week out are definitely not missing. From the very beginning, The Rock comes out now, and we didn't really talk about this last week, but The Rock's new, the new visuals around The Rock's entrance with the lightning bolts coming in, because people noticed. You guys are smart. I love how smart all of us wrestling fans are now. We notice the details. And I feel like the more we notice the details, the more the details are put in. There's a very nice relationship going back and forth these days. But ever since The Rock turned heel, as The Rock himself has said, the eyes on the Brahma Bull that light up the Tron when The Rock comes to the ring, they're red now. People notice that. So they said, okay, let's go a step further. The lightning bolts that come in. It's such a cool look now. when The Rock is standing there and that giant Brahma bull is behind him, those eyes are red, and the lightning bolts start striking down behind The Rock. But then the thing happened. The thing happened. There have been requests for this thing ever since The Rock turned, ever since Las Vegas and that press conference. I think that's really when it started. Hollywood Rock. Mentions of Hollywood Rock started going. Just the fact that The Rock was a villain at all left people going, we want Hollywood Rock to be back there. Hollywood Rock is, of course, what The Rock morphed into when he returned to the WWE in the early 2000s. This is when the WWE universe were far less accepting of their superstars leaving the sport and going off into Hollywood. The Rock has normalized that. The idea that John Cena would leave and go do some movies, come back, wrestle a couple matches, leave, do a couple movies. The idea that, there would be a WWE studio and The Miz would become a Marine. Like, all this stuff was stuff that a while back it was like, you're either here, because wrestling fans were defensive for a while. If you were a wrestling fan, it was like, this is the family. You don't leave the family. And it affected The Rock. People started booing him when he came back. You sold out. You sold out is not a chant that you hear anymore. And I like that it's gone away because it never really made sense. But I think that one of the reasons why the fans turned on The Rock in the early 2000s when he went to go make movies is because that's kind of what you did. They say there was no tribalism. Tribalism is this new thing in wrestling. It's not a new thing. Tribalism was always around. It was just different ways of communicating. There wasn't Twitter. There was no tribalism on Twitter back in the day because there was no Twitter. But there was still tribalism. When people found out that Diesel and Razor Ramon were leaving, you sold out. You sold out. In Survivor Series 1997, when the WWE leaked that Bret the Hitman Hart was going to be going to WCW, and this may very well be his last match in WWE, you sold out. You sold out. Because you're leaving, so you're an enemy. That's not really the case anymore, Everybody's just kind of happy to see everybody prosper, it seems like, to at least some degree. But that was what happened to The Rock. And so The Rock leaned all the way into it and said, okay, if you want me to be this sellout, phony Hollywood actor, that's who I'll be. And he changed everything. Changed his look. Changed his presentation. That was when he started doing the Rock concerts. And he changed his theme song. And that's the song that we got on SmackDown. It starts with, bow, 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 bow. That song that we all know and love. And then it just transitions into Hollywood Rock. And if you knew, you knew. And a lot of people in that audience knew. Because there was an instant reaction. The internet instantly reacted to it. I instantly reacted to it because it's happening. He's doing the thing. And The Rock comes out with his Versace vest. I don't even know if it's actually Versace. It's just that's what we say. And the Hollywood Rock music is playing and he's coming out alone. And The Rock came out and, we'll talk about this because there's questions as to the true heeldom, the true heel nature of The Rock. Because when The Rock came out, he's kind of kissing up to Memphis a little bit. He didn't call them crackhead Karens. He didn't call them meth addicts. He didn't say that this was the largest collection of trailer park trash that The Rock has ever seen. No. He seemed happy to be back in Memphis. So happy, as a matter of fact, that he decided it was time to put on a rock concert. And he gets out his musicians and they stand on the table playing the harmonica and everything. The Rock, he takes out his guitar. Well, no, he didn't take out his guitar. No, he sang it a cappella. He's done his guitar before, but this time it was a cappella. And I felt like the content of the songs, like, again, it was like fans were clapping. And they were cheering and they were laughing at the jokes. And so it makes you go like, oh, I guess he's a babyface again. I guess that didn't really work, did it? But listen to what he's saying. And it's interesting because listen to what he's saying and what would the context be if the people that he was talking about were with him. He literally said that Cody Rhodes, who is the most popular, good guy wrestler in the WWE, The Rock said that Cody Rhodes exists on this planet because of the combined forces of drugs and cheap condoms. That's what The Rock said. That's your good guy? Drugs and cheap condoms gave us the American nightmare? That's what he said. He brought up the Cody crybabies again. He called them the B word, as a matter of fact. Call them crybabies. He disrespected them. And then he said they can kiss the ass, is what he said, of the final boss. Of course, referring to himself as the final boss. He would refer to himself a second time as the final boss, El Mero Mero. And the commentator, he didn't say it in Spanish, and the commentators, Wade Barrett and Corey Graves, would both refer to The Rock as the final boss after The Rock's promo. Clearly, this is what The Rock is positioning himself as. Roman Reigns is the tribal chief. The Rock is the final boss. And then after the song, The Rock picked up the mic and cut a traditional promo. And he did it right in tight with the camera. I like how he was right on top of that camera. He was talking down the barrel. And it was different. It was different for The Rock because it was mean. It was like not fun. It was mean. He's talking about Mama Rhodes, Cody Rhodes' mama. I want you in the front row. Cody Rhodes' mama. And he said Cody Rhodes is not going to get to hand Cody Rhodes. First, he started talking about Cody Rhodes crying. He said, you got to finally slap The Rock. You slapped a taste out of The Rock's mouth. And what's the next thing that you did? The first chance that you got when you went on Monday Night Raw, what's the next thing that you did? And he plays Cody Rhodes' promo, a little clip of it from Raw, when Cody's getting welled up and he's getting emotional. And he said, you cried. You cried? That's what you do after you slap The Rock? You cry? He mocked Cody Rhodes for crying. This is toxic masculinity. We live in a world where crying is okay. We'll get to Cody Rhodes crying. He then painted a scenario, and he had started painting this scenario in one of his social media promos, which I love that these things happen. He got about a 10-minute promo in his gym on Friday afternoon, kind of talking about similar stuff. But after bringing up Stardust on the big screen, after doing all this stuff, then he got serious. No more fun. And he goes, he says, you're not going to hand a championship belt to your mom. No. This is the only belt she's going to get. And he pulls out a weight belt with the Brahma Bull on it. And he goes on to describe in detail the whipping and the beating that The Rock is planning on giving Cody Rhodes on WrestleMania Saturday. And The Rock says that after that belt is covered in tears and sweat and your blood, Cody, that he's going to go to Mama Rhodes. He's going to make sure that she has a front row seat. He's going to hand her the belt full of her son's blood and say, what can I say except you're welcome? If you are a parent of a young child or an early to mid-teen, what a pop. The fact that The Rock actually cited Maui. Now, Maui, this is important. Maui is lovable. Maui is charismatic. But ultimately, when we meet Maui is in Moana, I'm talking about, of course. Maui is a selfish guy. Maui is acting in complete self-interest. Maui is singing this song to Moana, and it's a captivating song. What can I say besides you're welcome? And then what does he do? He locks her in a cave and tries to steal her boat. You see, this is the Pied Piper over here. He's luring you into a false sense of security with his charisma. And what did The Rock do? Let's step out. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, the man who voiced the character of Maui. What did he do on Smackdown? He told Memphis that he loved them. Finally, The Rock has come back home. He laughed with them. He sang them a song. Charisma. Had everybody clap along. Da, 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 da. While he sat there, insulting the American Nightmare, doing the very thing that upset him that Cody Rhodes did, insulting the family of Cody Rhodes, and then talking about what he's going to do to disrespect this man's mother. But hey, it's okay. It's okay, it's okay. You're welcome. The Rock is here. When you say that The Rock as a heel is not working, there's levels to this. There are layers going on. You understand? The Rock is doing the same thing that Maui did. The Rock is luring Memphis and the people watching SmackDown at home into this false sense of security through song and charisma. Fun quips, jokes, rhythm, style. He makes it cool. And then once he's got you lured in, that's when he sails off with your boat. The Rock is a villain, not just because of what he's saying about Cody Rhodes, but because he's a complete phony. He's manipulating the audience into cheering for him. And then he's telling you that he's doing it by referencing Maui. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's what I got. I got watching that, like that The Rock, as everybody's cheering for him, that version of The Rock is the biggest scumbag on the show. Cody Rhodes has been busting his ass for 2 years, going to every show, taking every picture, signing every autograph. Yeah, I'll be the best man at your wedding. Yeah, you can have Rhea Ripley's chewed up gum. Yeah, I'm going to give you this table. Yeah, I'm going to do whatever you need me to do. Because I want you to have somebody that you can look up to. And what's The Rock doing? He's doing what Maui would have done in Moana. The Rock is using his style, his coolness, and his charisma and song, important, to trick people into thinking it's okay to boo Cody Rhodes and to mock him for crying as he reflects on his late father. Brilliant. To me, just absolutely brilliant storytelling. So, what are we left with? Well, I do want to mention a shout out to Trick Williams, who, when The Rock took out his weight belt, the audience started chanting, "Whoop that trick. Whoop that trick. Whoop that trick," which, of course, comes from Hustle and Flow and everything, and does have some, they were referencing what was going on in the promo, but also referencing Trick Williams. And it felt very similar to me to The Rock standing at Madison Square Garden at Survivor Series when the audience started chanting for Zack Ryder. Kind of letting everybody know that right now, whether you want to go with it or not, Zack Ryder's the guy. The fact that The Rock was in the ring, hyping up the biggest story in wrestling right now, talking about Cody Rhodes, talking about Roman Reigns, talking about Seth Rollins, and Trick Williams comes up, that bodes very well for Trick Williams. But the final boss thing, so The Rock referring to himself as the final boss. This is, of course, very significant because going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if he himself already owns the trademark on it. We'll probably see t-shirts by next week. I don't know what we're waiting for with the Cody Crybaby t-shirts, by the way. I know a lot of people that would have already ordered them. The fact that there aren't Cody Crybaby shirts just doesn't make any sense to me. But I believe that we're going to get Final Boss Rock shirts. I can only hope. Look, there is, as we talked about last week, there is a version of WrestleMania where Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins have their arms in the air. Cody Rhodes is the world champion. And we go off the air with a happy ending. That is possible. I'm not sitting here and going like that can't happen, that won't happen. That is more possible now than it has been throughout this entire build. But there is also this version where Roman Reigns wins. Now, a lot of people are calling for The Rock to turn on Roman Reigns. First of all, The Rock helping Cody Rhodes at this point, it's like he literally insulted his mother on television. The Rock can help Cody Rhodes and go back to be like, oh, it was all a ruse. But if you want me to believe that The Rock was insulting your mother on television, and that's okay because he was a double agent, that feels like you're taking some giant liberties in storytelling. You could also have Roman Reigns lose the title, and then The Rock turns on Roman after WrestleMania to take Roman's spot as the tribal chief. But when The Rock announces himself as the final boss, I just can't get the idea out of my head of Roman Reigns turning on The Rock. Yes, it does make sense. Yet we're eventually going to get a Roman Reigns babyface, I believe. He's too good. And it would make sense that as good of a heel as The Rock is, that Roman as a babyface trying to take out this final boss would be amazing. But what if that's not happening yet? What if it's not time for that yet? What if Roman Reigns keeps the title at WrestleMania? What do you think Roman Reigns thinks about The Rock calling himself the final boss? What do you think Roman Reigns feels about Paul Heyman making Roman Reigns stay in the ring instead of going home because The Rock is coming to the ring a couple of weeks ago? What do you think Roman Reigns thinks about all the YouTube commentators that are discussing whether or not The Rock is taking Roman Reigns' spotlight? What do you think Roman Reigns thinks about the fact that that character, The Rock, thinks that this is all about him, and many, including people who were once fully with the idea of this is all about you, Roman, whatever you need, my tribal chief, are now kind of going, The Rock's coming. I can't believe it. The Rock's coming. I can't get the idea out of my head that Roman Reigns could keep the title. And then the following Smackdown, they advertise, a title, a championship ceremony for the tribal chief. And that's when Roman Reigns decides it's time to recalibrate the bloodline and remind everybody who the top dog is. And they take out The Rock. And that could come at if Jimmy loses to Jey at WrestleMania, for example. What's Jimmy going to do to get back in the good graces of Roman Reigns? Maybe he's got to take out The Rock. Maybe he kicks The Rock first. And then Roman Reigns starts going to town on The Rock. Maybe when everybody thinks Solo Sikoa is going to turn on Roman, Solo spikes The Rock. What if Roman says, Jimmy, you're out? And Rock, I think it's time to recalibrate who the top dog is. Solo Sikoa spikes The Rock. The Rock goes down. The beatdown happens. Paul Heyman is looking horrified because he doesn't know what to do. And then that's it. And then we have to find out where the bloodline lies. Maybe and then when we do eventually have The Rock versus Roman Reigns, now The Rock is going to come back to get vengeance against somebody who may or may not still be the WWE Universal Champion at that point. But with The Rock calling himself the final boss, there are those that see that as The Rock saying, no, Roman, I'm the man, and The Rock's going to turn on Roman. I can't help but hope it goes the other way. That Roman resents the fact that The Rock thinks that he's the final boss, and Roman takes out The Rock. It's what I'd like to see. So I told you, The Rock was talking about Cody's promo on Raw, and this was something that a lot of people were talking about. Cody Rhodes crying on Monday Night Raw. Now, I do want to say, they did the sit-down interview between Michael Cole and Cody Rhodes. Michael Cole said, "What do you want to talk about?" I did do that gag, by the way, when and you can see it on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel, when Cody Rhodes premiered his documentary. I hosted the Q&A with Cody following the doc, and I said, "What do you want to talk about?" I did the gag. He was right. It's hard not to do it when you're in the moment. But there were a couple of really good points in that segment. One specifically was when Michael Cole says, "How can you trust Seth Rollins? After everything that's happened, how can you trust Seth Rollins?" Bringing to light, this is something we've talked about on the podcast. This is something that many conversations have been had about this, that Seth Rollins has every reason in the world to betray Cody Rhodes. When we think Seth Rollins said, "I'll be your shield," the first thing we think about is the fact that he betrayed Roman Reigns in the shield, and that he wants to get that victory over Roman himself. Every partner he's ever had, he's turned on. So why wouldn't he also turn on Cody? Michael Cole bringing that all the way forward, I thought was great, because those are, again, those moments that don't insult our intelligence. When it's like, this is what everybody's thinking anyway, so let's not pretend it's not. If you've got the opportunity to have a sit-down conversation in kayfabe with Cody Rhodes, what are you going to ask him? Why isn't anybody asking him about the risk of Seth Rollins? The fact that Seth is the one who accepted the match, the fact that all this has been going on. So I thought that was really, really good. Cody, of course, brought up the old head podcasters. Now, I'm a big head podcaster. I'm not an old head podcaster. But it was interesting. Cody brought up old head podcasters and saying that why is he getting emotional? Why is he wearing a suit? Why isn't he doing it this way? Why isn't he doing it that way? And what did I see? Old head podcasters making comments about Cody crying, making comments about Cody wearing a suit. It was very interesting. Now, part of that is also, kind of bringing that forward, of course. If Cody accused me of doing something, I would just do it. It's good for business. But I think a couple of things. Number one, I like that Cody was emotional. I like that Cody got choked up. I like that he got welled up. I like that Cody, when he cuts those impassioned promos, he doesn't talk about what I'm going to do to you, what you did to me. He talks about why, for him, he needs this. He basically explained what the story is and why it's so important. And that it goes beyond Cody at this point. That it's Cody's family. It's Cody's fans that have come through this with him. It's about everyone in this journey. And he acknowledges, almost without saying it, the investment that fans have made in this. But then he also talks about that it's real for his family. And all of a sudden, as I was watching that promo, I felt like before Monday, a lot of the attention was on the tag match. It was no longer about Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. It was about Cody and Seth versus Roman and Rock. Because especially with The Rock, how do you distract from that tag match in any way, shape, or form? But once I saw that promo, once Cody broke down why the story was important, not what the story was, but why the story was important, all of a sudden you realize that Saturday is just a means to an end. Saturday, at one point, was about Cody getting his hands on The Rock. He got his hands on The Rock. Now, Saturday is about putting himself in the position on Sunday where he actually can finish the story. Because if he wins on Saturday, there's no bloodline interference on Sunday. I thought it was great. I also love that it is the polar opposite of The Rock's promo. That this is why Cody gets the response that Cody gets. Because Cody is bringing you in close. And Cody is just being himself. Cody is not being a character. Cody is not using any tricks. Cody is just, hey, you felt this way before too, haven't you? Yes, I have. Well, then come with me on this ride. This is for all of us. The Rock is the most electrifying man in sports and entertainment. Roman Reigns is this larger-than-life, unconquerable, insurmountable foe. Cody is us. Cody is just a guy who happens to have put his entire life into this and has worked harder than anybody else to get better than anybody else and just wants the opportunity in a fair way to get what he thinks he should get. And that's what I took away. And I thought that the Cody promo was super effective. I also thought that the Seth Drew interaction was finally super effective. I think Seth has been running on all cylinders building up to this. His mic work leading up to WrestleMania in the last month has been some of the best stuff he has ever done. And I like that we got that reaction from Drew McIntyre, that when Seth specifically said, of all the things that I'm worried about, of all the concerns that I have leading towards WrestleMania, you're on the bottom of the list. And it screwed up Drew's head. There was a reaction. There was a back and forth with this, as much good work as Drew has been doing, as righteous as that character has been. The fact that Seth was able to finally hit him back with one right across the eyes and keep it moving, that moment was great. I still think there's going to be a great story to tell when you realize that Seth has not put the work into preparing for Drew McIntyre that he should have. I hope that's the story. It might, who knows? But yeah, I thought it was something really, really cool. Speaking of cool stuff, I think there is some very interesting stuff happening over on the other side of the fence in AEW world. So big business went down on Wednesday. On Monday, we had this amazing promo from Cody. On Wednesday, we had big business. On Friday, we had The Rock leading us into Smackdown with Song. This is how hot. This is how great. This is what an embarrassment of riches that we as wrestling fans have right now. So at big business, the thing that we all thought was going to happen, happened. The show opens, much like it did those years ago in Chicago with the Cult of Personality playing. A new song starts playing, but then you instantly see CEO, and we already know what this is. Here comes Mercedes Mone. Mercedes Mone is All Elite. The former Sasha Banks joins AEW. She is finally, this is something that people have been waiting for a long time, seeing the former Sasha Banks, now Mercedes, on national television, in character, ready to tell stories once more. And I thought that her introductory promo was exactly what it should have been. Hey, did you miss me? I'm here. Let's rock and roll. Just a hello. I'm giving you a chance to see me. I got dollar signs in my hair. I'm ready to rock and roll. I want to fight everybody. We've seen that a lot, both in AEW and WWE, to tell you the truth. But at a point, unless you're coming back for a specific reason, let me know. Now, we also saw her again come out at the end of the night where she ended up saving Willow Nightingale, who I think a lot of people assumed would be one of her first foes because Willow, of course, was responsible for the injury that put Mercedes out of action for many months. But instead, she helped Willow and fought off Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Now, okay, so a lot going on there. First of all, I think that, and I know that it's not AEW's footage necessarily, but I do think, and maybe this is very WWE of me, but I do think that AEW does not do a great job of bringing everybody in. The idea that everybody watching Mercedes Moné on AEW knew what happened between her and Willow Nightingale, I think is misguided. The reason that you sign somebody like that is to get new eyes on the product, whether they be eyes that see her as a big name celebrity, that the day after the show, she was on the news in Boston. She was sitting front row at the Celtics game. And if the idea is that she's sitting front row at the Celtics game looking like a big-ass star and people want to see, what's this all about, this AEW thing? Let me turn it on. Well, then we can't program everything for hardcores that are watching New Japan shows from Los Angeles and know that Willow Nightingale, injured, or that Mercedes was injured during that tournament match with Willow Nightingale. I think that the commentators said it, but, and maybe this is next week. Have Mercedes talk about it. Have Mercedes talk about the fact that I was out of action for this many months because of this and that, and this is how I feel about it, and this is what I'm going to do about it, or this is what I'm not going to do about it, or this is where I land on it. Let's bring everybody on board for whatever that story is, because I don't even know what the story is yet. What direction are you going to go with that? Because if you're going to do it as a main event segment and have this stare down between Willow and Mercedes happen, for some of us, it was like, oh, whoa, they're going for it. And for others, it was like, oh, I wonder what that's all about. Let's really bring everybody in. I think, too, it does make sense to me. If the idea is that she's going to be a good guy and go, because right now, both of the women's champions are villains, Julia Hart and Toni Storm. Obviously, it would make sense to see Mercedes and Toni Storm, Mercedes fight for the AEW Women's Championship. But realistically speaking, the AEW Women's Championship is on a Toni Storm right now. Toni Storm is not a good first big match for Mercedes in this incarnation, because Toni Storm is like this over-the-top character and is also kind of beloved. You want to see Mercedes get serious. It's the first time you've seen her in a big match in years. But you can't really get serious if we're also enjoying the idea that the entrance is in black and white and Tony's making the over-the-top faces. So I do think that the TBS championship makes a little more sense. I mean, honestly, I don't think it would have been the dumbest thing in the world to have Deonna Purrazzo beat Toni Storm at the pay-per-view and then have Mercedes go after Deonna Purrazzo, because Deonna Purrazzo versus Mercedes, that's more of that first championship match that you want to see from Mercedes. I also don't think that Toni Storm really needs to have the title on her right now. It's almost like one of those things like what happened when you put the title on The Fiend. Not that The Fiend and the Toni Storm character are anything alike, but realistically, when you have a character that's that rich and is popular just for being a character, the title can sometimes complicate things. And to an extent, I feel like that's happening with Toni Storm, as is evident by the fact that it doesn't really make sense for Toni Storm versus Mercedes. It feels to me anyway like a mismatch. You might feel differently about that. So if the idea is that she's going to go after the TBS championship, I mean, I think that you're going to end up with Sky Blue and Julia Hart versus Mercedes and Willow at some point. And at that point, I was always a fan of Sasha Banks as a bad guy. I thought Sasha Banks as a villain was one of the best things. I loved it. But with Mercedes back for the first time, I also feel like fans kind of want to cheer her. Maybe Willow turns on Mercedes, but then Willow doesn't have a title, but you could just still have a grudge match. I don't know. I do think that it's paramount that you start telling big stories with Mercedes. I think that you want big stories and big matches with this person because you want her to maintain that star power. That's the whole point. What you want is kind of what WWE did with Cody Rhodes. You want her to be bigger in AEW than she ever was in WWE. And if you can get Mercedes to be bigger than Sasha Banks was, then AEW as a company is going to get even bigger. But in order to do that, it's got to be compelling matches and compelling stories. Has to be. It's good timing because there's a lot going on in AEW right now. As we were talking about, I think last week, Okada being in is real good timing along with Mercedes. And Okada being a villain is cool. I feel like, and this is a positive thing, AEW started and I think gained a lot of traction because they were an alternative to WWE at a time when people wanted an alternative. People wanted an alternative, and AEW provided that. Unfortunately for them, a lot less people feel the need for an alternative to WWE now. I find in my travels, the people that I talk to, it would seem that less people need an alternative to WWE than have in a very long time, which means that you don't have the necessity for AEW that you once did. Now, I think AEW being around is an incredibly great thing for the business and for everybody in the business. And I want them to succeed. Eric Bischoff says on his podcast, there's better than, less than, or different from. And I think that at a point, a lot of fans were like, I watch AEW because it's better. Well, now, I don't know if it's better. Some people like it better. But WWE is really good right now. So instead, I think the move is to be different from. And how do you be different from? I almost feel like as I'm watching these matches get built up, as I'm looking at the roster and seeing what you're capable of, as I'm watching the way they did Sting's final match, the way they did Ospreay, they're building to Ospreay and Bryan Danielson. You could see AEW almost become this like Americanized version of 2016, 2017 New Japan Pro Wrestling, which I think would be really, really great. I think it would be really great for pay-per-view numbers. And I think it would be like awesome as new wrestling fans come in and people become, I think WWE is bringing in new hardcore wrestling fans. And I'm seeing that every single week when I read the emails on this podcast. Once you become a hardcore wrestling fan, once WWE gets you in the door because of the spectacle and the story, there's a large percentage of those people that might go, hey, also, what are you doing on Wednesdays? Because there's this show where they have some cool stories, but really they have this roster full of people doing awesome matches. The matches have to have meaning, don't get me wrong. But it's okay to have a little less story and a little more great match. That's okay. If that becomes the calling card of your promotion, that's okay. You can't have no story. If you have no story, then it's like, what are we watching? This now becomes an exhibition. It's a stunt show. Like, it makes no sense. But you have a little less story than WWE does, but a little more action, a little more fast-paced, a little more athleticism. Well, now we're on to something different. And I think that's a spot, a sweet spot that AEW can find itself in, especially when you get a Mercedes, when you get an Okada, when you get a Will Ospreay. I've been watching Will Ospreay and what he's been doing in AEW, from his match at Revolution to what he did at the press conference after Revolution, the way he talked to the media, the promo he cut on Dynamite. I don't know how many American wrestling fans realize the level of superstar that this guy is. Will Ospreay has the potential, not only because I think the word out on Ospreay, to the hardcores, they're like, yeah, we've already known how good he is. And that's true. But I think there's a lot of people who knew Will Ospreay as a guy who has great matches. Because they weren't watching the New Japan product religiously. When a match would catch somebody's attention, oh, you got to see this match, you got to see that match. Oh, okay, I'll watch that. It's like when AEW first started, there were a lot of people who just knew Kenny Omega from having good matches in New Japan. Oh, I remember this match. I remember that match. They didn't know the stories that he's told. They didn't know about the long, legendary, years-long story with, Kota Ibushi and all this stuff because that's not how they were watching, and that's to be expected. And I think the same thing with Will Ospreay. I don't think a lot of people realized how good Will Ospreay is on a microphone, how good Will Ospreay is at telling stories, how charming he is in interviews. I mean, I'm watching him, and after 3 weeks, it is so clear to me. Bet the farm. Put everything on Ospreay. That dude needs to be the face of your company. And I mean, to me, I thought that by the end of the experiment of MJF as a babyface, it wasn't working anymore. I don't know when MJF is coming back, but the idea of a babyface MJF returning to feud with a villainous Adam Cole, it does not appeal to me at this point. What does appeal to me is a babyface Will Ospreay being the one to conquer Samoa Joe. And at some point, you want to get Swerve in there. And I don't know when that point is, because I don't want Swerve to win the title just to lose it to Will Ospreay. But it's so clear to me that right now, Will Ospreay needs to be the face of that company. 1,000% Will Ospreay needs to be the face of that company. And maybe you find, a way to put the Continental Crown or some other title on Swerve, and Swerve can elevate that crown to the point that that he becomes so undeniable it's absurd, and Swerve needs to be the face of the company, because I think he will get there. But right now, today, Will Ospreay needs to be the face of the company today. And maybe at the end of the year, maybe you keep MJF out for an entire year. But I would love, because Will Ospreay will be so over as a babyface that it will allow MJF to come back and be a villain again. The idea of Will Ospreay reaching the height of popularity as a good guy in AEW, only for MJF after a year of being gone to come back and try to snatch it away. That's one of the reasons I think MJF had to become a good guy. He was more popular than anybody else. They weren't booing MJF anymore. They liked him. The fans liked him better than they liked anybody else. I think Will Ospreay, the same way to a different, degree, but like how the only person, like The Rock, is doing all this stuff about Cody Rhodes and he's getting cheered. But that's okay, because Cody Rhodes is so popular that once he's standing face to face with The Rock, people will cheer Cody Rhodes. I have no question about that. I think MJF, it became very difficult for a good guy to face him because people were going to cheer MJF. Bryan Danielson could do it because people love Bryan Danielson. Will Ospreay could be that good guy. Will Ospreay could be that ultra good guy that MJF comes back to destroy. And the idea of MJF and Will Ospreay being that yin and yang, again, going back to the Batman and Joker, Superman and Lex Luthor, to me, I would absolutely love to see it. Now, when we talk about heroes, villains, fan reactions, we got to talk about the fan reaction that Sami Zayn got. WWE has been doing everything they can to get everybody over. And that's what you're supposed to do. That's part of this thing. Everybody should be getting over. If you're doing things right, everybody should be getting over in their own ways. But the Chad Gable, Sami Zayn situation is a complicated one because Sami Zayn spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks building this story. about how he didn't have this path to WrestleMania, and WrestleMania 39 got brought up, and he was in the main event, and he was so hot, and he was up here, and what do I have to do to get there? And Gunther was laughing at him and everything. But at the same time that this story was being told, the Chad Gable story was being told. And the Chad Gable story is somebody that people have really grown to love. The one guy who beat Gunther by countout. And the guy who has to fight for his family. We watched his little daughter cry. So I thought that for what it was very well done. Because it left, at the end of that gauntlet match, it left you going, it could be either of these two. And I, from the beginning, figured it would be Sami Zayn. I thought it should be Sami Zayn. I was like, yeah, Sami Zayn's the one. What I didn't realize was how many people thought the opposite. How many people thought it should be Chad Gable. And maybe thought it was going to be Chad Gable. Because Sami Zayn was met with a ton of backlash from people who thought it should be Chad Gable. And I get it. You know, Chad Gable has excelled in every role that he's been in. We've seen him have to deal with a lot. We all lived through Shorty G. Nobody liked Shorty G. Nobody liked Shorty G for two reasons. Number one, what's to like about Shorty G? You're taking an Olympic level athlete, but because he's not as tall as other people, you're putting him in baggy shorts and calling him Shorty G. That's terrible. Number two, we watched him go through it. We watched him grow. We saw the potential there. We saw what this could be, and it was being squandered. And we watched this guy go through it. And then he did this Alpha Academy thing. And because of Chad Gable and Otis and Maxine Dupree, everybody associated, and Akira Tozawa, everyone associated with Alpha Academy is popular. And we watched this guy perform the way he performed in that Gunther match in front of his family. Pulling on our heartstrings. But maybe most importantly, Chad Gable is a guy who hasn't had the main event of WrestleMania. Chad Gable is a guy who's never had that moment. The story of Sami Zayn getting his moment back and finding his momentum again, it's important. But to a lot of people, the idea that Chad Gable finally has a moment is a bigger story. Now, for me, I do think that the Sami Zayn moment is a bigger moment. Will he beat Gunther? I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's almost like I don't think they'll make it a triple threat, and I hope that they don't, because the United States Championship match is already a triple threat. But it's almost like, do you do Sami Zayn loses, Chad Gable gets Gunther at WrestleMania Backlash, Chad Gable beats Gunther, Sami Zayn turns and faces Chad Gable? But I don't know. Sami Zayn's such a good babyface. Yeah, Sami Zayn doesn't have to turn to face Chad Gable. Or maybe you just go, no, maybe there's another plan for Chad Gable. I don't know, but I think it's very interesting. And I'm interested to watch what's done to make sure that Sami is okay coming out of this. We had a bunch of WrestleMania matches made this week, actually. So we got Sami Zayn versus Gunther. The six-pack ladder match was announced. AJ Styles versus, I was going to say Austin Theory, but AJ Styles versus LA Knight was announced, which is a great spot, especially for LA Knight to just have an old-fashioned one-on-one grudge match. Nobody taking that attention away. That's a pretty good spot at WrestleMania. Triple threat, United States Championship match. Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton, which I think we saw coming. And a big one, Jey Uso versus Jimmy Uso. It's official. Jey Uso comes to the ring on Monday, makes the challenge, and Jimmy Uso accepts. I love Jimmy Uso's promo on Smackdown. I raised you. Big brother got you. Big brother got you. He started talking about when this the whole bloodline thing first started. It does make you wonder, are we going to harken back to the beginning of the bloodline? are we going to talk about where the whole thing started? You know, is Jimmy going to bring up the fact that he had to have Jey's back from the beginning? Are we going to get some kind? Because I still feel as though we haven't really had an explanation as to why Jimmy turned on Roman and then turned on Jey to go back to Roman. We haven't really gotten that explained to us. Are we going to get a little of that? Or are we going to go all the way back and have Jimmy talk about the fact that he had to go into the Hell in a Cell and help him? He had to go into like everything that Jimmy had to do to help Jey. Is Jey going to bring up the fact that Jimmy became the right-hand man and brought Jey in, and that Jey never wanted to be in the bloodline to begin with? I don't know. There's a lot there. This rivalry can go back to before the Usos were even the Undisputed Tag Team Champions. It can go back to the very beginning of the bloodline and what that dynamic was between those two. But I do hope that we take full advantage of the fact that there's some rich storytelling going on in there. And it's really interesting because I have always been on board, and I think I said it on this podcast months ago, that I wasn't into the idea of the Usos splitting. I wasn't into the idea of Jimmy versus Jey. I love the Usos as a tag team. But now, I love Jey Uso as a singles babyface. I think he's so great. I want to see a title on him. I want to see the world title on him. Don't forget, and maybe plans change, but Jey Uso did say he wants to have singles gold by the end of the year. So, but yeah, so, I think you got a real opportunity to tell some cool stories with Jimmy versus Jey. Speaking of cool, and I think you'll think it's pretty cool. Speaking of cool, it was announced this week that WrestleMania weekend, there's always a lot of shows that piggyback off of what the WWE is doing for WrestleMania. One of that shows is this one. Notsam Wrestling coming to Philadelphia Wednesday night of WrestleMania week there, April 3rd. Helium Comedy Club, 8 p.m. show. You can go to notsam.com to get tickets to that show right now. But GCW, Game Changer Wrestling, I'm a big fan of them. I always get the Notsam logo printed on their ring mat. They do the Collective every year, which is a grouping of shows put on by sometimes different promotions, sometimes different people. And they basically just run whatever it is, a dozen shows over the course of 3 or 4 days. And they're running shows all day. And one of those shows is Blood Sport, which Josh Barnett puts on. Blood Sport is kind of this, the ropes are down off the ring, and it's this kind of hybrid MMA pro wrestling thing. It's kind of what Raw Underground, I think, wanted to be. So the announcement was made on Friday or Saturday that Shayna Baszler from the WWE was going to be competing at Bloodsport. That a WWE superstar WrestleMania weekend was stepping off the main roster and going into the indies to compete at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. And I guess, people wondered if this was WWE and GCW working together. Are we going to see, like, when we saw WWE and ECW working together, when we saw WWE and USWA working together, when we saw WWE and AAA working together? Like, is this going to be one of those things? But it seems like this is more Josh Barnett reaching out to Triple H and going, how great would it be? Can we have Shayna Baszler on this show? And Triple H granting Shayna the ability to say yes if that's something that she wants to do, which is amazing. It's so great. It's so good for wrestling. It's so good for the show. It's so good for Shayna Baszler. And hopefully she goes and beats someone's ass at Bloodsport, because I was thinking, too, that, like, Triple H is the guy that booked Shayna Baszler as this unstoppable beast in NXT. So if the idea is that she goes to Bloodsport to remind everybody who she is and what she's capable of, it could be pretty good. I think that it could be good for everybody involved. So hopefully we see even more of that. It goes back to Chad Gable. I think seeing Chad Gable at a blood sport would be an awesome, awesome thing. Really cool, but who knows if we will. But it is. It's very, very exciting. I think WrestleMania weekend is going to be a very exciting weekend. I'm interested to see what you think. You can email us, notsamwrestling@gmail.com, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Let's go back. Usually I start with the emails that have come in most recently. I'm going to go back to an email that came in last Sunday, right after I recorded, I guess. Shiamo writes in, I might be coming from a position of being a stan, but I truly believe Io should retain at WrestleMania. She's been the champion since August 5th, and nothing significant has come of the reign. I think for Io to be the star she should be, and this heel version of Damage Control to be a real threat, she should win at WrestleMania. Her beating Bayley when everyone wants Bayley to win the heat she needs. Well, I don't think that it would do as much for Io as you think it would, because she would win. It would be Damage Control winning. It wouldn't be Io winning. I mean, Dakota Kai is kind of looked at. I would say Asuka's the biggest star in Damage Control. Dakota Kai is being portrayed as kind of, the center point of Damage Control right now. So, I would have to disagree with you. Lindsay writes in, Sam, thank you for walking me off ledges and coddling me through heartbreak. That's what these podcasts are all about, our feelings. Your perspective and patience is remarkable and appreciated. Tell that to my wife. When the day came that we were forced to move forward without Vince making decisions, I wondered who the universe is going to hate now. He was always the best bad guy. When anything went wrong, blame Vince. I wondered who would be that vacuum, the fall guy now. The people will not want to hate Triple H. My speculation is our new corporate bad guy in our future is The Rock. This is bigger than this story for what he is planning, I believe. It's very possible. And it was that. Imagine The Rock randomly showing up, ruining matches and scheduling crap ones. That's risky. Because what you don't want in wrestling is to put on a bad product to get heat on the authority figure. It's better to have babyface the authority figure by putting on a good product. But it is nice when things go wrong for there to be somebody to blame. And you're right. When WrestleMania started getting wonky and people didn't like that Cody wasn't going to be able to finish the story, nobody blamed Triple H. They blamed The Rock. Even when Cody lost at WrestleMania last year, most fans that I talked to were like, oh, no, that wasn't a Triple H thing. That was somebody else. Joey writes in, what's the hap, Sam? Long-time listener, first-time emailing. I've been listening to you since back in the Katie Linendahl days. She rules, by the way. Yes, she does. I've always really enjoyed all your fresh takes and commentaries on pro wrestling and love seeing you on kickoff shows. You represent us fans better than anyone. I really appreciate that. You should see me on The Bump and Raw Talk. Well, I'm going to take a stab at my first fantasy booking. Curious to what you think. Given Jade Cargill's badass performance at the Royal Rumble and Tiffany Stratton stealing the show at Women's Elimination Chamber, I honestly think putting these two in a program would really be something WWE could cook a great meal with. I don't know if that's the phrase. Both are new to the roster. Both have made significant impacts early on. And I think both of their respective characters could create some great chemistry. I'm probably speculating wildly. I know the rules. Well, I hope you're speculating wildly. That's rule number 2. But I can see these two propelling each other to megastardom down the road as opponents, similar to Brett Shawn. Well, we'll see. Also, I vote yes to having Let Them Cook be the 4th rule. I appreciate that, Joey. I don't think that should happen now. Right now, both Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton are building. You don't want them to build at the expense of each other. Meaning, if you put them together now and Jade Cargill comes out of the story on top, that's a big loss for Tiffany Stratton to take this early on. I think that you want to find stuff for each of them to do to let them build and build and build. And then if they are building and if they are getting better and better and better, then have the superpowers meet. Courtney writes in, first-time emailer. Let's see. I was wondering what you think of my idea on Jimmy Uso's involvement in the bloodline going forward. I have a scenario I can't get out of my head where Jimmy would lose to his brother Jey on night one, see the errors of his ways, and actually be the one to stab Roman in the back in the Bloodline Rules match on night 2, costing him the Universal title. If that stipulation means only Blood members can be at ringside, Jimmy, of course, could be involved. Jimmy could continue to simply play the third fiddle to Rock and Roman going forward, but Jimmy being the one to screw Roman would elevate him to a whole new level. After all, the entire lyrics to Jimmy's theme song are that he's done putting family first. I don't think that's likely to happen. Here's the problem with that whole thing, is that you would think that that would lead to Jimmy Uso versus Roman Reigns. But if we've already watched Jimmy Uso lose to Jey Uso, then he's not exactly a credible threat to Roman Reigns, which means that coming out of that, Jimmy's going to look bad because Roman Reigns is either going to kick his ass or whatever. It's just where do we go next from that? Doesn't work for me. TJ writes in, first-time emailer, been watching the pod since 2022. I love watching the pod. That's good. It's been about I don't even think we were putting the whole pod on YouTube in 2022. It's been about a year and a half since the NXT rebrand, and the titles still haven't been updated. I would really like to see all gold version of those titles back. Also, what are your top 5 WrestleMania stages / sets? In no particular order, 39, 34, 30, 33, and trying to think if there are any earlier ones, but not really. I guess WrestleMania 9. Make it nostalgic. Oliver writes in, love the pod. I had a quick thing to ask. I'm currently writing a 5-page essay for my history class in high school. Nice. And I magically got my teacher to allow me to write said essay on the cultural impact of Hulkamania. Love it. My question is, besides the cartoon growing the business, Mania 3's pay-per-view buy rate, for example, and importance to American culture during its prime, is there anything big I'm missing regarding Hulkamania's cultural impact? Well, I think the idea of... I think what's interesting is in the 1980s, bigger was better, right? Everything is just bigger. More. You know, it'd be great if this was even bigger. You know, it would be great if I was richer. You know, it'd be great if my car went faster. Everything was just bigger is better, bigger is better, bigger is better. And you saw that even with kids, like, you know, all the cartoon characters were Thundercats, were He-Man with these big, bulging biceps and everything. But the idea was that bigger is better, and that's the way it's supposed to be in America. And Hulkamania fit that mold completely. Because Hulk Hogan was the ultimate superhero come to life. Hulk Hogan fought for America. He waved the American flag everywhere that he went. But he wasn't looked at as a superhero. He wasn't looked at as, this is a creation. Like, this is not something you can be like. You know, like The Rock is not looked at as anything you should aspire to be like because he's special. Roman Reigns, same thing. Hulk Hogan, 24-inch pythons, 6-foot whatever, tears his shirt off, muscles everywhere. And you know how that happened? He trained, he said his prayers, and he ate his vitamins. It's a very unique time because the idea was not only is this over-the-top character something we're all admiring, but we're all aspiring to be it. And there's this idea that every kid is growing up going, I can be just like that. When the fact is you can't. But in the 1980s, that went along with I think, where the culture was. So I think that there's something there, something in the idea that Hulk Hogan was larger than life, but his value system was that you too can be larger than life if you're of high moral standing and work hard, and eat right. Interesting. Sid writes in, I love what you do. Just get back into wrestling, and thanks for helping everyone navigate this crazy road to WrestleMania. We appreciate you. Congrats on your new baby. I appreciate you, man. I wish you could just let me live in the illusion that Cody is winning on night 2. Look, I've tried to put that back into the show. Last 2 weeks, I've brought up how it could happen. Do you see Seth losing to Drew on night 2? Yes. I could see them using an injury angle with Seth perhaps walking into the match with a bum knee. Yes. You know, I could see, even if Cody wins, I could see Seth and Cody standing victoriously at the end of the night, even though Seth lost to Drew. And it would drive Drew even more crazy. He's the champion. Why is your arm in the air at the end of the night? Cody writes in, not Cody Rhodes. Hey, Sam, big fan, been listening for a few years now. Here's what I'm thinking. If The Rock versus John Cena, WrestleMania 28. Yeah. I don't know what you're writing, dude. This email makes no sense. Michael writes in, I feel that I'm the only one who is extremely irritated when a WWE wrestler goes from a WWE championship reign or pursuit and then wins or pursues a lower championship, i.e. the U.S. or the IC title. Don't get me wrong. The U.S. or the IC title have prestige, of course, but they are lower on the totem pole than the Universal World Heavyweight Championship. There's so many examples of this happening in wrestling, in today's wrestling, that it's ridiculous. From my recollection, this was not so common in the 90s or 2000s, which I grew up watching. Can you explain the rationale for this so that I stop being so irritated by this? Well, I mean, I'm not sure that you're accurate. You know, what? I mean, are you talking about Sami Zayn? First of all, I think all titles have been elevated. I think that at the moment, Gunther has elevated the Intercontinental title quite a bit. WWE has done a good job elevating championships. But also, in the 90s and 2000s, people would just leave. They'd go to a different promotion or something. I think that you're going to have to email me back with some specific examples of this. I think this is an odd irritation. Travis writes in, love the show and hope all is well. It is more than well. Wanted to give you my predictions on the main events. Okay. Rock and Roman win the tag match. Yeah, for sure. Seth loses to Drew after bloodline interference. Possibly. Cody fights off the bloodline and all their shenanigans in a bloodline rules match just to be screwed by alluring Seth Rollins. You just gave my... Don't write in with my predictions. Those are the... You just set up what I've already set up on the show. What... Cornelius writes in, do you ever get backlash from superstars because of something you've said or your opinion? If so, please tell them they're for entertainment purposes. Not serious backlash. People have made comments, but not serious backlash. Mrs. Weiss writes in, Mr. Roberts, long time, first time. I would love for WWE to work with free agents and other companies. They do. They sign them. What percentage of chance do you think this would ever happen? I mean, what are you talking about? Happen, and do you think you would see the signs, or would it be a total surprise? I don't know what you're talking about. They sign free agents all the time. I am dreaming that WWE one day would have one-time appearances from time to time. For example, it would be awesome if the next year Mox could show... WWE, the reason Mox isn't in WWE is because he's got an AEW contract. Mox is not a free agent. He's in AEW. Someone like Cena could show up as a guest commentator at AEW. So you're saying the contract shouldn't exist. Or someone like Kenny Omega working in multiple companies doing premium live event appearances. I would love for TNA to get some. I mean, also, thank you for your time. I got hooked in NXT. Yeah, listen. People have contracts. I mean, if you just want contracts to not exist anymore, that's something. But none of those people you just mentioned are free agents. They're signed to other organizations. Sean writes in, hello, Sam. Thanks for doing the podcast every Monday. It's my regular background audio for the start of the work week. Passive listening. When talking about the Cody Roman WWE in general, you often say that having Cody lose at WrestleMania would just make all of them get bigger constantly because they've proven it before. But as far as the Cody Roman story goes, last year's loss was a lot easier for people to swallow because it was early on and they didn't have multiple years invested into it. It was the right call. But we also know that you dangle the payoff without giving it for too long, people do actually cool off. As the greatest example of this, we have the NWO versus Sting. This is already dumb. Which WCW chose after months of heels. Look, okay. Starrcade 97, Hogan beating Sting. Hogan didn't beat Sting. But then WCW were never able to maintain the hype. That didn't happen at Starrcade 97. Which WCW chose after months of heels beating babyfaces on the regular to extend past Starrcade 97 with Hogan beating Sting. Sean, what are you talking about? But then WCW were never able to maintain the hype for either Sting or the NWO. We also know that Cody has lost a last chance stipulation before in AEW, and he cooled off for the rest of his time in the company. How do you know Roman and Cody will only get bigger if Cody loses rather than repeating the mistakes of WCW or AEW? Neither of those two contexts have anything to do with what we're dealing with now. Sting won at Starrcade 97. The reason that finish was terrible is because the finish was terrible. Hogan covered Sting for what was supposed to be a fast count. Nick Patrick counted at a very reasonable speed to 3. And then Bret Hart came and restarted the match. Sting then won the match. So the idea was Sting wins and Hogan still looks strong. The finish was terrible. Sting won, and it cooled off both of them because the finish was so bad. But Hogan did not win that match. Second of all, the AEW thing, Cody did not cool off because he lost a last chance stipulation in AEW. Cody cooled off in AEW because there was not cohesiveness with what he was doing and what else was going on in AEW. It was called the Codyverse. Most of Cody cooling off was like he was in that weird like pseudo heel thing where he was coming off as a heel but saying he was never going to be a heel, but it was making people boo him, and it just got complicated. But he lost his last chance stipulation in AEW like within 3 months of the company being in business or something like that. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but very quickly. There wasn't this build of, oh, I want him to be champion. I want him to be champion. Oh, he lost and he lost the stip. Now he's cooled off. That didn't happen either. Neither of those two things have anything to do with this. Last year's WrestleMania is much more closely related to this year's WrestleMania than either of those two things that you presented. And you could say last year it was easier for people to swallow because it was early on and they didn't have multiple years invested into this. It was the right call. Yeah, everybody's finally admitting that now, but they did not last year. Everybody was furious last year. Furious. Okay? So, let's not... Clearly, you have a revisionist history thing going on because you say things that aren't true. But that wasn't how people felt after last year's WrestleMania. WWE has the Money in the Bank. They have the Royal Rumble. If you want Cody to win the title later this year, all you have to do is put the briefcase on him. If Cody wins Money in the Bank, stipulation, that's a stipulation breaker right there. All you have to do is wait, what is this? April, May, June, July. 3 months later, Cody climbs the ladder, gets the briefcase, and then he challenges Roman at SummerSlam a month after Money in the Bank. I just solved your problem. Russell writes in, given the recent events, we obviously won't be seeing Lesnar in the Hall of Fame this year. No excusing anything he's alleged to have been involved with, but do you feel like enough time he will eventually be inducted? I have no, who knows? Who knows? These are speculating wildly is one thing. I'm going to get to more of the emails that were sent recently. Let's go to Pranev from India. I love that. From India. I'm 32 and I've been watching wrestling since I was 7, and I'm a huge fan of your show. Thank you, man. I have a finish for night 1, and I want your opinion on it. I agree. With all of us thinking Rock and Roman winning, night 1 makes sense. But what if Seth pins Roman at night 1? That way he can get his W over Roman before Cody. The next day he loses to Drew. It won't hurt him that much unless losing both will. Both night will. So Cody versus Roman will be bloodline free. I feel like this finish also justified because last year Cody said to Roman, Jay's going to leave you. Jimmy and Solo will leave you. Paul becomes an advocate. And then he says, a man without a family, a Roman with no more reigns, a chief without a tribe. Okay, so you're saying that when Cody said, I'm going to take everything from you, that technically, if he wins, yeah, I just don't see it. And then what? You have Cody take everything from Roman and then beat him? You know, it's kind of interesting the way you set it up because of Cody's words, but it's not, it doesn't make no sense. I'll say that. I'm going to go to another one. This is a long one. I'm going to see if they're quick ones. Okay. Lupe, I've really enjoyed the television graphics of the different superstars WWE has been using going to commercials. It reminds me of the old Saturday Night's main event shows where every superstar had their own individual graphic. Your thoughts? I've been enjoying them too. I love the change. Lupe writes in, I was recently watching an old NXT show with Bayley, and I had forgotten about her interaction with the young female fan. Then I was checking the list of guests for WrestleCon, and it says Izzy is going to be there, which made me wonder, since Izzy will be in Philadelphia, would WWE use her for WrestleMania to bring Hugger Bayley back? Remember, everything counts. Bayley hugging Izzy, again, it does not make sense. I'm not mad at it. Matthew writes in, what do you think should be the opening match for WrestleMania? I got tickets to night 1, hoping it's Jey versus Jimmy is the opener. The opening match. Jey versus Jimmy. I mean, it's a lot of bloodline. It would make sense for that to be the opening match. I don't know. I'll have to think about that when the whole card is revealed. We'll fantasy book a whole thing. All right, I'm looking for some quick ones. Avery. Sam, just wanted to know what your thoughts are. Chad Gable, I already told you. Jay writes in, with Nick Aldis making the match official for WrestleMania XL, I can't help but think that time and setting couldn't be more perfect to bring back a match that hasn't been seen in decades. What are your thoughts of changing the U.S. title match from a standard triple threat to a three-way dance? They don't do three-way dances in WWE. It changes the whole reason for being. I think it requires 2 guys to get pinned. Yeah, I would say no. I would say it's a no. No for me, dog. Okay, this is going to be the last one. Zachary writes in. Okay, he sent this email 3 times, so he wants this email read. So this is a good last email. Nick Aldis recently referred to this current time period in WWE as the Renaissance era. I wholly agree that we are in the midst of a rebirth, a more compelling, mature, and coherent storyline, so I love the name. What say you? P.S. As a Delaware native, I am only 25 minutes from Philadelphia, so I'll see you at the Helium on the 3rd, my friend. I appreciate that, my man. The Renaissance era. I don't know. I think, for me, Renaissance is too reflective on what came before it, because rebirth has a lot to do with what came before it. I don't know what this era is going to be called. I'd call it the Emergency Podcast era. That's probably the best name for it. The Not Sam era, I think, could be fun. People would be into it. Pretty cool. Guys, I appreciate y'all. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit like, comment. I have a new video project that's coming out. We put together, I'll tell you now, if you've listened or watched all the way to the end of the podcast, we've put together clips of all the interviews that I've done with Cody Rhodes. to try to tell kind of the story of his career. This is going back from Dashing to Stardust, leaving WWE, coming back to WWE, and all the way to this year. And it's a pretty cool video. So we're going to put that up on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel this week. Make sure you check it out. If you're listening on Apple, don't forget to leave a rating and a review. Spotify, leave a rating and a review if you can. And we'll see you very soon here on Notsam Wrestling.